David M. Buss, The Evolution of Desire, Strategies of Human Mating. What characteristics do you prioritize in a potential partner? Is it their looks? Maybe a personality that's compatible with your own? Or perhaps you're seeking someone who is financially stable? Even though courtship and customs have changed over the past millennia, the psychology behind our mating strategies has essentially remained the same. The two main qualities that our ancestors looked for when selecting a mate were the ability to provide resources and the ability to bear a child. And on a basic level, the same holds true today. There are many desired traits that lie behind our adaptive strategies for existence. These same strategies consume nearly all of our modern social endeavors. David Buss's The Evolution of Desire draws on an in-depth study of over 10,000 people from 37 cultures to explore the psychological aspects of desire. That includes mating preferences, casual sex, what it takes to stay together, and what it takes to break up. In this brief blink, we'll primarily focus on mating preferences through a broad and very generalized overview of what people have historically looked for in a mate, according to Buss's findings. What women want in a mate. Women have long had complex preferences when it comes to choosing mates, preferences that have evolved over time due to changing socioeconomic circumstances. But let's start with some basic biology. Women can only reproduce so many times in life, and having a child is a huge commitment that can come with serious consequences. A woman invests her body along with years of her life to carry, birth, and nurture just one child. This makes her extremely valuable to potential mates, but to consider sacrificing her time and her body, women have needed to secure some sort of investment in return, which is often a commitment from her mate. Centuries ago, it was important for women to have a mate who could ensure their offspring's survivability. This involved both pre- and post-birth factors. Pre-birth, the health of her potential mate was, and still is, one of the biggest aspects considered. Mating with an unhealthy individual posed a potential threat by exposing the mother and her child to disease. To state the obvious, medicine wasn't as advanced as it is today, and many children didn't survive past early childhood. So a mate's health directly affected the continuation of a bloodline's reproductive success. The better the genes, the better the chance of survival. Post-birth factors involved whether the mate was a good provider. Could he provide food and shelter for his family? Would he sacrifice his energy and time into doing so? Finding a reliable provider meant considering multiple characteristics: a man's physical attributes, social status, athletic skill, emotional stability, and intelligence, among others. But every woman is unique, and every situation differs. A potential mate who's extremely valuable to one person might not mean much to another. Some women have focused more on a man's ability to grow. If he's reached his peak already, what does he have to offer in the future? Can and will he remain committed? Does he have debts or children from previous relationships that will affect his ability to provide? These preferences weren't exclusive to Western cultures. They were recognized all across the world, including by cultures that practice polygyny, the practice of having more than one wife. Many of the same mating preferences have also held true for lesbian women. Throughout history, they've looked for good health, kindness, and industriousness in their partners, but have placed a greater importance on honesty and intelligence than heterosexual women. So how does this psychology of desire relate to modern times, where women can provide for themselves without needing a mate? Well, studies show that even when women have access to their own resources and are financially stable, they still prefer a partner who provides some kind of support, whether it's through money, time, or energy. Human desires are still deeply rooted in our ancestry. We may live in a different environment, but we have the same basic needs and tendencies. Now it's time to look at the other end of the spectrum and analyze the psychology of desire in men. What men want in a mate. Throughout history, women have often been satisfied with just one mate, but the opposite could be said about men. Ancestral males knew that they benefited from having more than one mate. It increased their chances of reproductive success. In their eyes, the more women, the better. Some high-status figures even had hundreds of mates. In sharp contrast to the long-term commitment and toll that bearing children takes on a woman, a sexual encounter would only take up a small bit of a man's time and have zero physical repercussions. As a result, men didn't really have a reason to commit to any one woman. So why did so many end up committing? Because most women required that from their mates. No commitment, no sex. For a man, being with one woman meant an increased probability of his paternity and a higher chance that his offspring would survive. Ancestral children were better off when they had two parents or relatives invested in their development, and healthy, capable children ensured a man's lineage. That's the basic reasoning behind why men either choose to mate with multiple women or just one. Now let's briefly turn to the characteristics they seek in a mate. Typically, most males' desires seem to be visually dependent. In other words, they focus on looks. Today, we might call these kinds of men shallow, but their desires are actually founded in reasonable principles. For ancestral men, beauty signified good health and youth, which in turn signified fertility. They looked for women with features like luscious hair, clear skin, plump lips, and good muscle tone. There was no different for gay men. In general, they've also placed importance on youth and physical appearance. In addition, both gay and straight men have historically been more interested in having sex with strangers than lesbian and straight women. Men's desires were pretty similar across cultures, but preferences differed according to economic and geographic factors. In cultures where food was scarcer, for instance, a fuller body signaled good health and wealth, making it more attractive than a slim physique. To sum up, the largest difference between men's and women's desires is that men have traditionally valued physical beauty more, while women have placed more value on what their partner has to offer. As of the 2016 version of The Evolution of Desire, there hasn't been a mention of studies on non-binary individuals and their strategies of desire. Changing desires. It's normal for desires to fluctuate, and they can change within a lifetime as well as over the course of evolutionary history. Women's desirability has historically been linked to their fertility, which is naturally connected to age. As a woman got older, her ability to produce offspring decreased. This made her less desirable in the eyes of potential mates. Today, things are a bit different. Many people decide not to have children, so age isn't as relevant. It's become more common for women to date younger men, and although a woman might not be able to bear children as she ages, her value as a parent increases. Her nurturing skills can help her children reproduce and pass on the family's genes. In terms of men's desirability, not much has changed over time. As a man goes through life, he tends to gain resources and social status. His ability to provide the support a mate craves often continues into old age. While changes in desire will continue to subtly shift for centuries to come, the author David Buss argues that we'll always essentially revert back to our baseline ancestral tendencies. Women will seek providers, and men will seek heirs and status. You've just finished our blink to The Evolution of Desire by David M. Buss. The key message here is that although an increasing number of people are deciding not to have children, our mating desires are deeply rooted in a long evolutionary history that informs how we choose our partners. Men tend to look for nurturing young women to carry their children, while women want a man who can provide the necessary resources for survival. Women don't need to rely on a man for shelter or food anymore, but they still want someone who offers support.
Well, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to Books in Blinks and leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, check out the other titles in our playlist. I'm Pedro from Books in Blinks, and I hope to see you here again.